getting the advanced stuff, I'm just perpetuating a really bad problem. And I would say, I can't live with that. I would start that very year going, okay, I need to talk to like 4 or 5 people who teach the same thing I do. And we need to sit down and like have it out. Because I really felt yucky, almost panicky about what I was doing. And that's one of the reasons why I scolded Virginia Tech, is that you didn't set me up to be able to do that. And I was really scared about doing the very thing. You describing, how do I really know what's excellent in some particular standard? And then you offering the same scenario. And then thinking I had to be so precise to a 1/10 of a decimal point. And I'm just telling you, whole decimal points are just as troubling as 1/10, 1/100th, 1,000th, 1/10,000, and so on. A lot to think about. And bringing up scenarios, as both of these gentlemen are doing, is exactly the way we clarify thinking and decide where we want to go next in our own journey. So please, when we're not here together, you're back in your buildings, lay this stuff out with candor, as these wonderful participants have been doing. It will help. Well, I like metaphors. So this depicts what? It's an example of a transaction. Survey says, what? A reminder that grades aren't transactions. Are you making grades transactional? That means you're making it about coercion and bribery. Do this, fear or lure of the grade book, or don't do this, that sort of thing. And the more you make grades about transactions and coercion, compensation, validation, reward, all that stuff, the less likely you're going to be able to accurately report what a kid knows. So I'm telling you, you can do both. But you can't do them simultaneously, because they conflate the two together and it doesn't work. This is all to remind you that there's a veneer that needs to be cracked of objectivity. We are very subjective. Lesson plans are subjective. If you're just doing this, you need another pair of eyes to look at your lesson plans from time to time. Missed opportunities. What about this group? And they go, oh yeah, you're right. We're all very subjective, and we all have our own emotional baggage. I remind you that a B nationwide is average. A C in most schools is considered poor. That used to be a D when I was a kid, but now it's a B. B is the C, the normal. You fall below a B, you'll stay after school for 3 days, mister. You're going to be grounded until that gets up to be a B. This is a weird thing, but society changes its emotional baggage. So I'm reminding you, we have to work with that world. We're very messy people. And we have to have the benefit of the doubt. So let's mess you up just a little bit more. 4 really uncomfortable questions. I think this first one we've talked about a little bit already, but give it a read. Great question to ask each other back home. Second, we've already talked about this, haven't we? Putting previous curriculum on subsequent tests to see what they carry forward. Do you remember that? And the fact that the most recent evidence tends to be the most accurate. And then third, talked about that, haven't we? And the last one is really uncomfortable. Oh, I don't want this to happen to me or any of you. Take a look. If any of you are on X or Twitter and you want to look at Rick Wormeli 2, that's my particular account. I had the first account, but it was hacked. So I'm so creative teaching the future of America, I just added it to the second account. Thank you. So creative, I know. So innovative. But we just had a huge conversation this morning about this because a new report came out this summer that teachers' grades that aren't standards-based and everything are totally whacked out. They're misaligned with outside the school test scores, particularly ACT, SAT, and AP there. Not let alone NWEA or some of the other ones, but they were talking more about the national exams in the article. And we were talking about, well, is it grade accurate, but then also, are standardized tests really the most accurate report of your student learning? And authors of standardized tests, of course, will be the first ones to tell you, no, you're not supposed to use this as the sole judgment of a kid. It is supposed to be used in conjunction with other things and used diagnostically, not punitively or evaluatively as you do that. So the standardized test is okay. It's for how the data is used that makes it inappropriate or appropriate, and helpful in what's going on. So we're going back and forth talking about it. Well, what's happened is test scores have gone down, but grades keep going up. Mismatch. In the last 50 years, we've had a huge growth in the number of A's on report cards, but not the same level of growth in the testing being done of children. So people are worried about grade inflation, and justifiably so. But the idea is, do I want integrity? Is integrity this? If I put the grade on there, and you test them on the exact same stuff, months down the road, outside the school, objectively, would you find them at the exact same report, same score? That's integrity. And as close as we possibly can to do that is the thing that we're trying to achieve here today. What doesn't do that are a lot of more traditional grading practices that really have kind of led us astray. So this is a really awkward question, and I think we should sit down and go, here's the kids' grades, does it match the scores roughly with what they do and they perform outside of school? So I go to teachers above me. I've always had a chance to go, there's a grade level above me, no matter what I've taught, and said, hey, what do you notice about the kids who came through me last year? Are they prepared? Do they know their stuff? Are they independent? Are they mature? Things like that. And that can be scary because sometimes people don't want to find that out. They make get comfortable, like, I know they're not prepared. They don't know. I just rather live in bliss of ignorance. Because if you tell me that, I'm going to feel so bad because I'm a conscientious person. But it's actually a cool thing to do. I highly recommend it. It's a way to kind of refocus. We get together and do things like this. How many questions are on the state exam or whatever major exam? There's like 17 questions. I'll spend weeks on this. There's only 2 questions, 3 days. That's it. But I sat down with my colleagues and found out this person spent 5 weeks or 6 weeks on something on which I only spent 1 week. Who's right? Again, it's a really weird thing until you sit down and actually calibrate your evidence with each other, as we've been talking about with these gentlemen. So this is going to be controversial as well. Oh boy, here we go, right before lunch. Well, we have a little bit of time before lunch, but anyway. Lunch will be about noon, just so you know. If we do that. So now, what's an A or a 4.0? Well, the only person in the whole world that describes it a particular way that a lot of people have accepted is one that believes this. 99%, everyone else in the assessment, grading, and curriculum world actually disagrees with him. This is Bob Marzano I'm talking about. Robert Marzano. Some of you know his stuff. He's the guy who came up with doing this. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. What's a 3 when it comes to the standard? A 3 means you've done what with the standard? You have proficient, what was that one over here? Mastered the standard, is that what it is? Met the standard, something along those lines. But what's a 4 supposed to be? Exceeds. Goes above and beyond. I totally disagree with it, so does everybody else on the planet except for Bob Marzano and his team. So I'm here, where's Bob? You're going to have to listen to me. So here's the basic idea. We're out for accurate communication. And what Tom Gusky and Susan Brookhart and other researchers have found is that it's physically impossible. I mean, like 99.9% impossible, so I'll just say impossible. For teachers who teach the same thing, they calibrate what is above and beyond. Very nebulous, very vague. Is it going through that? So what they say is, look, the report card is a contract between parents and schools. We think as parents, you're teaching this. So the report card is the report of that, not something above and beyond. Second thing to consider, if they go above and beyond, those are literally different standards. And if you weave them into the report of these standards, which are like on grade level stuff, then you're knowingly distorting the capacity for it to actually report accurately against what was identified as the course curriculum. So, the recommendation is this. If they demonstrate the standard, you must be demanding of what you expect of the standard. Well, some people say for the 4.0, above and beyond, you have to apply it in a different domain. You have to handle novel applications. That's minimum for meets the standard. That is not above and beyond stuff. So I need to see intellectual agility, versatile skill of application, adjusting it for different audience or different purpose. I need to see that just for meets. And the top of your scale, your rubric, your proficiency level, whatever it is meets the standard. Or proficient, whatever you might call that, for meeting standard. If you go above and beyond, the recommendation is this. Have a separate addendum or area of your report card that says, and here's how you do with advanced, sophisticated, or enriched material. You know, like plutonium. Irradiate children, turn them into isotopes, whatever it can be. We can do this. Anyway, so I put that in this square here, the idea that the top of the scale should be meets, not exceeds, because that's a nebulous thing. Guys, I'll tell you, I've been in a classroom where teachers have actually said this, an A, I can't really define it, but I know it when I see it. How can kids hit targets they can't even see? This is a joke. This is bringing shame in our profession. Here's another one. Ready? Yeah, an A, it's a gestalt. It's a general feeling I take away after experiencing your work over time. What? Again, how vague and nebulous do you want to be? Bob Marzano's definition is along these lines, right? The student demonstrated skill, performance, and content understanding of things not taught in class. So now the only way to get an A is based on your personal experience that's been provided by your family and the lived life you had. What? I can never get an A? No, if I do excellent with the standard, I should get excellent. I can't tell you how many times I get people send me screenshots minus the student's name to protect confidentiality, but the kid has straight A's in all the tests, but they got a B on the report card. He was excellent, but he wasn't super duper Barney. For those who remember Barney. Anyway, so understand, I'm about accurate communication, not muddying the waters. So I'm going to ask you to strongly consider having this separate column or an addendum you send them with a report card. Now, parents who are living vicariously through their children, you know what I mean. You could get an A. Why couldn't you get A? You go back to your A. I want the kid to say, you want the A? You come take my class. If it's so important to you. You're the one who gets A, but no, this is about me. Anyway, we talk to parents about that, and we go, ha, ha, but it's actually uncomfortable because they recognize themselves. But anyway, here's one of the other bugaboos, or the concerns here. For the above and beyond part, stop saying, well, you can teach it to others. He knows it well, but no, teaching it to another human, I am a brilliant person at writing, but teaching somebody else to do it is a different skill set outside of the standard called, proficient writer. I'm great at fixing carburetors or the timing of a car's engine or whatever it might be. I'm great, but teaching another mechanic how to do that is a totally different set of skills and knowledge. So do not use that as, this is what I mean for above and beyond. We would find some way to raise the multifaceted, dynamic complexity of it. So if you want to look at DOK, depth of knowledge questions, if you want to do that, or Bloom's revised taxonomy, if you want to do that, but don't sit there and do things that are actually a false representation of advanced performance. So kind of a weird thing, I know, but A's are meet, but you're demanding about what that means to meet. And then, what about all of these? Are any of these challenging, you think, to schools, or to some of you here in the room? I'm hoping you'll say yes. Yeah.
Zeros are always.
Yeah. I usually save that for end of the day, and sometimes our conversation's so good I don't get to it. But I wrote a whole article on that, and I'll point it out to you. It's later in the resources. So if we don't get to the zeros thing, particularly on the 100-point scale, I'm really happy to talk to you about it. I'll send you the article. I wrote it for the Washington Post, and it came out last year. I'll send it to you, and then we can talk by phone or email if you like. But that is a really big hang-up. That's a big challenge, and that's on the list. Let's try this one. Anything there look like it would give you a challenge? Oh, particularly the bottom one. My life outside of school makes me a better person when I'm in school, teaching, so I don't want to impose on that at all. I need to find a way that I can actually have that life. I like to go home and smell my wife's hair. Ooh, did I say that out loud? That was supposed to be an indoor idea. Anyway, in school, as I go. But I like to play sports, like to be with my grandchildren. I'm a relatively new grandpa. They're just 2 and 4. They were kind of COVID babies. So dad jokes were good, but grandpa jokes are even better. Anyway, they take them to a supremely high level. But the idea of time outside of school, while I try to do all these wise things in school, yeah, that's really hard. So the last slide in this sample challenges, look what the editor called it. Where do you find time to do all this stuff? So what I did is I wrote an article and I updated it about every half year. So every 6 months I add more things as I find them. And I'll send it to you, but you can also go online and just find the latest version there. It's where do I find time to plan and prepare, but then where do I find time to work with children when, I can't work with them, like if I'm going to do redos and retakes. Where do I find time to relearning versus the reassessing and all those different things? Where do I find time to work with a kid when I get feedback to them rather directly? So there's lots of ideas in the article. If that would be something that would be helpful to you, go ahead and download it and share it with others. It's really okay. But I will also give you some time-saving tips later this afternoon. Don't worry, that's coming up. I'm thinking of you. She was talking about that earlier. And now we're here. So what did I say was going to happen? We're going to do grading principles later, but I had to build your disposition around all this. That's what I have done. Yeah, along the way, I've actually given you some advice about grading. So what I'd like to do is go through every principle here, and they're not that long, but go through the principle, what does it look like in the classroom, and then you ask really good candid questions about, well, what about this, and what about this, and what about this? And that's the way we're gonna move through the afternoon to the very end of the day. At the end of the day, at 2:55, I'm gonna stop and tell you a closing story. Wherever we finish, I will stay afterwards if you would like to have more questions and conversation, no problem. But I probably at 2:55 say, and here are the 2 or 3 sections we didn't get a chance to do. If you want to talk further, let me know, but here are some resources that will actually fill in the holes if you're curious. But right here, right now, let's get to the first one. I feel like it's a game show, the way the block is turning like that. So it's like Jeopardy, you know, the blocks turn. So ladies and gentlemen, let's go to the first swing, or $25,000 pyramid. For those of you who remember that, ding, 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 ding. There it is. What's your category? Your category today is, we'll take a look. It's about learning and growth, not mathematical justification. It's always about growth. I'm going to try to make that case for you right here. It's one of your operative tenets. And if you have the tenet or the principle, you can gather practical solutions that are much more effective than normal. So it's not just a list of recipes for your grading cookbook. This is being principled, and then the principle informs practical ideas or solutions as we do that. So you guys remember when you do s'mores, and you know somebody's telling ghost stories or embellishing a family story that's already getting extreme and wild, and you've got a split fork and you have 2 marshmallows, one on tying of the fork, or maybe it's a stick with 2 marshmallows or 1 marshmallow, and you've got the graham cracker and the chocolate bar holding in the hand or on your knee or right next to you on a log. Somebody's playing guitar, whatever it is, and you're holding it over the fire. What are you noticing as you hold it over the fire? What are you looking for? Turn colors to the color you want. Like what color would you like? Golden brown. I like mine slightly burnt and crispy, to be honest. I don't know why. I'm weird together. Okay, we get that. But what am I trying to prevent happening? Catching a fire, or it falls into the embers. Right? Okay, got it? So when I see that it's getting crispy or too brown or catching flame on one side, what do I do with the stick? I turn, I respond. So I am ceaselessly focused. I am ceaselessly vigilant in assessing the situation and then responding as a result of what I see. Does that make sense? So I never look up. Oh yeah, I'm listening to Ghost Story, but I'm looking at that marshmallow. It's gonna be perfect. I'm looking forward to this all day. Oh yeah, you can talk to me, but I'm gonna look at my marshmallow. As I do that, and if I look away, I'm like, oh no, it caught flame, ah! Whatever it is, I don't want that to happen. Well, the root of assessment is assidere, and in Latin, translated back into English, roughly, to sit beside. Oh, it's a coaching tool. It's not a gotcha tool. I presented material and caught you making mistakes. Come back tomorrow for more of the same rejection. It'll be fun. That's not teaching. I'm an advocate, not an adversary. Trying just to document where you fall short so we can move on. And I've really tallied where you fall short. That's not teaching. So teaching, I need to give you an accurate report. You're stronger here, medium here, stronger, weak, whatever. That's fine. But it's always for this, so we can. So the definition and assessment in every assessment grading book out there is roughly something like this. It's whatever you do to gather data so you can, and then that's the magic moment. So I can document your progress for all the stakeholders. Make sure everybody's clear on how you're progressing. I can provide feedback where you can monitor your own progress and then use that to improve your learning. Yeah. How about this? I'm getting assessment feedback so I can inform next steps and instruction. I can decide where we're going to go next. This is so powerful about what comes next that many schools don't call it feedback anymore. Because that feels like I'm just trying to justify and explain and document, maybe evaluate. You were here, but we're moving on. We're done with that. No. So what do? We call it feed forward. Now the kids aren't freaking out. Like, you're just trying to measure all of my mistakes and report that out, and that's going to be the total definition identity for me. So feed forward is, what am I going to do to gather information to improve next steps, to guide you in that, and to improve upon what we've already seen so far? A valuable idea. Well, this idea of growth is huge. It permeates everything. Hence the fruit side. I like to do metaphors in my graphics. So there's a plant, greenery, fruit, growth. What do I mean? On day 1, I will give you the scoring sheet, the evaluative criteria, examples of excellence in what we're going to be able to do by journey's end, by the end of the unit, whatever it happens to be. I'll give you the rubric, I'll give you whatever it is. But wait, that doesn't do it. If I do that, I also have to do this. Every 2, 3, 4 days, we stop and take stock of how you're progressing. So what do you think, where do you think you guys are regarding this standard? Mr. Wormeli, in looking at these descriptors, I think I'm like 1.5, not quite a 2, but I know I'm not just a 1, and here's why. And they have to explain it. Maybe they work with a partner first, and then they explain it to me. They're monitoring. The number one thing and the highest effect size, the highest impact, in all the meta-analyses of 670 or so different teaching strategies, is students self-monitoring. So, I'm a stranger, and I walk in your class, and I interview everybody. What are you supposed to be learning right now? What? She says, I don't know. When I do presentations, I'm the funniest one in the room. No, it's fine. That was funny. What are you supposed to be learning? What are you supposed to be learning? What are you supposed to be learning? And I interview them. Well, it turns out, in whatever way kids articulate, if they can tell you what they're supposed to be learning, what the goal is, again, any age group, any level, it's really, really powerful, but it has to have the second question with it. So the second question is this, and where are you in relationship to that? Where are you in your progression to that? Where are you in your progression? Where are you in progression? Well, it turns out, if kids know what they're supposed to be learning and where they are in that moment, at any point during the lesson series, they actually achieve that goal dramatically more often. So I want to put your path, the path to success. So I am always going to teach my kids to self-monitor, not wait for me to come from on high and bestow upon you some grade. I declare you here. You've made all these mistakes. Here's what you need to fix. That makes it very passive. And you know what they develop? Learned helplessness. And the over-dependence on the need for external validation. What? I'm a good student if I have a high score. I'm a bad student if I have a low score. I have value to my parents in relation to my grade. I have value to my teacher. No, you are infinitely more than your grade. The grade is not a statement of you and your character. The grade is actually an encapsulated summary of evidence you presented on one arbitrary calendar date. That's all it is. You are all these other things, wonderfully deep and complex, outside of just this great little tiny report there. So it's about growth. It's about where are you in your progression as you move towards the goal, not I caught you make mistakes and it's finite. So a proficiency scale, a rubric, is meant to help kids monitor their own progress. Some people write rubrics out to explain and justify the grade. Well, -5 this, and +2 for that. You had this, you had this, you had this, you didn't have that, you didn't do that, whatever. So here's the grade at the top. I'm writing out the rubric to explain the grade? No. You know what rubric's original intent was? And still today its primary intent is to help kids self-monitor their own progress. So that means that no one in my class misunderstands what a 1 is, or a 2 is, or a 3 is, or a 4 is. They know exactly what they are, not guess what's on the teacher's mind. And I help them take stock in relation to that goal. So a proficiency scale is a story unfolding. It is the stepping stones to the success. So what's the goal when it comes to chess? We identify all that. You want to get better at chess? What's your goal? What do you mean by better? We talk about it. And then we actually create some kind of stepping stone to self-monitor and get there. This is a lot easier with really small scales where you can define each one of those stepping stones really clearly, which we've already talked about just a little bit. Well, here are some examples from my school district for K-8. And actually, a lot of the high schools are using it as well. But check it out. Frequency, so you do it only seldom, or you do it like nearly all the time. My concern is, and I disagree with this just so you know, nearly all the time, most of the time, what's the difference? That could be subtle in some places. So I would say that needs probably different wording or different designation. Look at the one below. The level of support you require for you to be successful. Do you need a lot of support and prompting? Or can you do it totally independently? We want to aspire to the independence. Remember Oscar Wilde? His great quote, "The goal of any teacher is to put himself out of a job." If I'm a complete waste of your time at the end of the school year, I win. That's the goal. Third one down, what's your level of comprehension and understanding? And of course the bottom one, how many errors you have? I disagree with that one. I don't think that's really as valuable, but I will understand. But again, few, some. Let's make sure we're very clear-minded about what those are. I like this one from California, from Sonoma County. This is for English language learners. So I think the language acquisition, You're just emerging, expanding, I'm bridging, I'm lifelong learner of English, which is what hopefully everybody is. But wait, how about the amount of support you need in order to function with your English? Substantial, moderate, and then we have light and occasional. Again, I think this could be confused, so I would choose a different word. But I like that sequence. Well, I worked with this school district in Michigan, and they were all over the place. This school had that one, this whole department, this grade level had that kind of proficiency idea about what is excellent, what's not. Some people said mastery was the top, some people said proficient was the top, some people just said excellent. We're all over the place. So it took an entire day of facilitating the conversation, but we actually got to this. And what they decided would be the distinctions between the levels was the amount of accuracy, the degree of consistency, and the degree of working independently. So those are the only things that are different between a 4 and a 3 and a 2, or as you see here, mastery, proficient, and basic. 3 levels defined, 1 level called not yet, no evidence, insufficient credit, whatever you might want to say. Just not yet. So that was cool, but another district, this one in Wisconsin, I worked with them in the exact same mess. They had no idea what an A was, a B was. They were all over the place with their emotional baggage. By the end of the day, we were able to come up with this. Proficient, developing, emerging. And their literal grades in the report card are PR, DV, E, and IE. They don't have ABC or 432 or OGSNU. For those of you who use outstanding, good, satisfactory, needs improvement, unsatisfactory, or whatever it might be. But they had to get those levels together where they all would agree. Now, when you see something like this or this one afterwards, what you do is you go look at your own individual standards. And you go, okay, when it comes to 2-digit addition, or when it comes to amphibians versus reptiles, what is mastery, proficient, and basic, according to those descriptors? And you work that out with the subject-like colleagues, and that becomes kind of your reference point on how you figure out your grades. It takes a lot of conversation, and everybody's got their own background in terms of their expertise in the area, so you have to navigate that. There are overt books with skills on how do you negotiate evaluative criteria for proficiency levels without becoming toxic and divisive? Because it makes you vulnerable when you sit with a colleague and go, oh, I think this is important. You go, that's not important at all. Why would you think that was important? Where'd you go to school? We started imputing character. We don't want to do that. So one of the fun things is, and I highly recommend it for middle school and elementary and primary, is you have themed proficiency scales. Now, I will just tell you my preference. I always choose a proficiency scale that is related to what I'm teaching you, because then you actually learn all the parts of this particular sequence, just by looking at how things are graded. So are you a tadpole or a pollywog? Are you an egg? Are you a frog? What are you? We can do that. But here are some that I've seen around planet Earth. I'm just a hamburger bun without the meat. My level of mastery is, well, mine is, nice job. And some of the kids go, look at me, I got the whole Happy Meal. This is great. And so they progress in learning something through here. This probably is not tied to their curriculum, but it's a fun thing that kids like. So I've seen some of these. This is climbing a mountain, and we're seeing words like progressing, met, and they use surpassed, which I disagree. You can't surpass the summit. If you're at the summit, you summited. Floating, I don't know. This is my takeoff zone. We're gonna have a good time. Now look to the right. This person and this school decided to do sports theme. So you have starter, all-star. I'm an all-star. You can play music. It's great. MVP and coach. The next one you're about to see, I actually know this person who invented it, and it's gotten viral. Almost everybody loves it. It's used around the world. But again, I'm reminding you, choose something that the kids find interesting. So something that's part of their culture, a favorite cartoon. Use Bluey if you want to. Whatever it might be. I used Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon way back in the day. Different animals at different levels. I think, yeah, you could do whatever you want that would really lights them up. But this one is actually particularly popular. You're youngling or a Padawan? Much fire I see within you. You can be a Jedi Master. Yes, can you? You could be. Anyway, so yeah, there is no do, there is only win. Whatever it might be. So the other thing is, if you're about growth, many schools then realize there's curriculum overload for any one school year. It might take into the summer. It might take into the following year for you to learn something. So we're now going to have an E or digital portfolio that follows you every grade level for this number of 3 or 4 grade levels, like pre-K through grade 2, or grade 3 to grade 5, or maybe grade 5, 6, 7, 8, or middle school. This is your math portfolio, your religious portfolio, your coding, your PE portfolio, and you put stuff in there that shows your growth. But you always, when you put something in there, you have to have a letter of reflection that says, and here's what it's showing. It's showing these standards, and here's the evidence for it. If you're about growth, then you realize it's a multi-year journey. Let me just remind you of something. When we say this is for second graders to learn, that's incredibly arbitrary. You're making that up. There's not a lot of research on that. Even if you look at Ed Hirsch, he's the guy who wrote 6th graders should memorize this, 4th graders should memorize this. He's in Virginia. I have words with him from time to time. Anyway, if you're a second grader but you don't learn something until 3rd grade, I think you should give them power. I think you should say, you get the credit, you actually learned it. But there are kids in 2nd grade who didn't learn 1st grade stuff, and there's 1st graders who know 2nd and 3rd grade stuff. So if you have a running portfolio, you can actually insert that stuff and realize it takes multiple years to do this basic curriculum of K3 or K4, whatever it was. High school, we say the same thing. 9th grade through 12th grade, what's your science portfolio? What's your PE portfolio? What's your religion portfolio? All through. It takes 4 years to learn that. Not, well, that was freshman stuff. There's no possible way for you to learn it and get credit for it. I caught you. You should have done that in a finite little window. Well, the teacher's effectiveness, the way they graded, all that's going on with the kid, could dramatically affect what they learn. If it's worth having in the curriculum, it's worth keep teaching it even if they didn't get it in the 9.5 months you arbitrarily claimed. I made the case earlier, you're not beholden to a uniform timeline. So I am suggesting something to you, and some people are like, oh no, please, I like what my little nest egg, my part of the world. I am suggesting you become so intimate with the curriculum above you and below you, like when you're looping, when you follow the same group of kids through all the levels of that subject, that you could actually teach it. Because then when you teach in the current, you know where they're going to. You can teach in that context, where they're coming from, you're far more effective in the current. But if you don't have intimacy with the level above and below you, it's really hard. It's like a wild shot in the dark to see where that fits in the larger context. And you're just not as effective as you might be. Well, remember we're talking about growth. Do you remember me saying this sentiment? You were not your grade, remember that? And then I told you this. Yeah, the grade is just a summative judgment as of one calendar date. It is not the totality of you in the standard. It's usually just an encapsulation in one moment in time. So what does that mean? A reminder, grades are not in cement. They're temporary positions along a continuum or a progression at best. So given subsequent evidence down the road, the grade can go higher or lower if the evidence does change. And that's actually legit. Not, you can rest on your laurels, I'll never ask you this again. But what? You can only do that with the 4 to 8, the most pivotal of standards, and maybe half of the secondary ones. Does that make sense? That it's all about growth, you can totally change your status, your station? I hope. Woo! That was one. Hey, what was the first principle we discussed? We literally just did it a second ago. A short-term memory loss an issue?